That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Unidentified Objects, the directorial debut of Juan Felipe Zuleta, which premiered at, its world premiere was at the Inside Out Film Festival in Canada, and its North American premiere was, of course, at Outfest in 2022. It is being released courtesy of Quiver Distribution, June 2nd, 2023.
Directorial debut.
He's done a lot of shorts and a lot of music videos, including for Maluma.
The story: an uptight dwarf and his free-spirited, alien-obsessed neighbor hit the road on a border-defying search for their place in the universe. So the uptight dwarf, his name is Peter, but his character says dwarf is offensive, so he prefers little person. And his neighbor's name is Winona.
Winona J.
The story is very simple. Winona is Peter's neighbor, and she needs to get across the border to Canada. They're currently in New York, but she doesn't have a passport. So she wants to pay Peter to borrow his car so she can drive up there. And it takes some convincing, but he agrees to go with her. So they go on this road trip. And the reason she's trying to get up to Canada is because she wants to go to her intersection, which is like where the aliens are going to meet her.
That she's previously had
Dealings with,
and they've contacted her again and told her to be at these coordinates.
So everything culminates with them getting close to where they need to be, but Peter and Winona have a falling out. She sort of like tells him to kick rocks, but then he goes back to find her to apologize. So they're like in this field, and then some people show up who are dressed like they're part of a cult.
Yeah, it's very Jim Jones. Don't go with them.
But they receive it as like, these are the aliens coming to get her. So Peter takes his ass back home, and the film ends with him getting a visitor at his place, and it would appear that it might be either her or one of the aliens coming to get him.
Well, because the shot is established the same way Winona J visits him in the beginning, where you see, what are those ugly shoes called?
Crocs.
We see a shot of his yellow Crocs and then the door opening. But anyway.
I did like some things about the movie, like the two lead performances. So Peter's played by
Matthew August Jeffers, technically his debut. He also has had a character arc on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I liked the character and his performance. I also liked Winona, that actor.
Sarah Hay, who is Golden Globe nominated for a series she did called Flesh and Bone, which I would be interested in watching. I thought both of them had kind of a good chemistry and a nice energy. I thought Jeffers especially was pretty compelling. I'd like to see more of him.
Yeah. But this story was not for me. It's too Looney Tunes that it takes away from, I think, these strong performances and any of the heart that I think is supposed to be there.
It's a mechanism. I can see it's written by playwright Leland Frankel, and I can see where maybe on stage the sublime catharsis of this alien intervention we'd be more easily able to slip into rather than seeing it transpire on screen, because it's a road trip movie, and I feel like we're constantly reminded that the end goal is something so utterly ridiculous I can't even get on board with it.
Right.
Whereas I wanted Winona J, who's also like a sex worker. She's also kind of down and out. I wanted something a lot more kind of relatable and difficult for her to go through. Like she was going to snatch up her kid that was taken out of her hands, and I don't know. I needed something heavier, I think.
Yeah. Like, maybe make it like a black comedy.
And, Peter is, as much as I like this actor, Peter is so, self-pitying. He's like a lot of, self-loathing gay characters who haven't come to find any love for themselves yet. And I don't know that the film leads us to that at all either.
No, while I think it's a very good portrayal of this miserable character, I ended the film not really... I don't know that I needed to like him. But I feel like I could have felt a lot more for him. I was just very So a device that's used twice, maybe more, but I recall two distinct moments where Peter is daydreaming or fantasizing. The first time, it's earlier on in the film where he dreams about basically like the aliens coming to get him.
But as then they've been
Like as a police officer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see Peter get naked. That felt a little crazy because it's so early on in the film, and the way it's handled, it's like, oh well, this is not really happening. But the best scene of the film, I think, is his second sort of fantasy sequence. They've checked into a hotel close to the coordinates where Winona needs to be, and Peter spies this attractive man standing outside of a bar next to their hotel. So he goes back to tell Winona, who's already like taken off her makeup, she's lying in bed for the night. He becomes manic, like, girl, let's go get a drink. And he hasn't been friendly or upbeat with her the entire story. So clearly he's excited. He convinces her, but he can't wait for her to get ready. So he just goes to the bar. And he sits at the bar and he sees this handsome man. And the way it's played out is very effective because we thought like, oh wow, this man is really like interested in Peter, even though it seems unbelievable.
It seems, yeah.
Because of the location and the fact that there isn't anyone, like what are the odds that these two, but they like connect, start slow dancing, and then we realize that it's just a daydream and that the guy is actually kind of a dick and uses the F slur towards Peter. And then of course Peter's upset, and that's when he goes back to the hotel room and Peter and Winona have the outburst that leads to them separating. That vibe, what was happening there, I wish the entire movie was like that.
Well, because it's toying with us in a way when it's in the fantasy sequence that we don't know yet. I'm thinking it's like that film Dirty Girl with Juno Temple, which it was a film I enjoyed, but had some kind of that unbelievable hokiness to it. So, and then I think Zuleta has curated a nice soundtrack as well, because in that fantasy scene we're listening to Roy Orbison singing "Crying," which is a song I really like, and then right afterwards, when we realize what an asshole this guy is, it's ELO's Telephone Line. I don't know, I really like that. They also had a song called Slip Away by Perfume Genius, which I wasn't familiar with, in a montage sequence that I liked.
The film also references that it's COVID time because Peter wears like a construction worker's face mask. I haven't seen, it's been a minute since I've seen a film that's referencing COVID. So that was kind of interesting. Well, they don't say COVID, but I'm assuming.
Well, he also says he's prone to illness, and I think, suggesting that we're kind of fresh off of this pandemic.
I don't think it's bad. It was just, it's been a minute since a film sort of referenced the pandemic, I guess. I thought the better story, or a better story, could have been that we focus on Peter going on this trip. But maybe he's like from a small town, he feels disenfranchised and unloved and all the things, and maybe he's been corresponding with someone in the big city, so he upends his life to go there. And maybe Winona's his friend who comes with him, she's not so damn crazy, and then when he gets to the big city, realizes that maybe he was catfished, but everything kind of works out. But then there's like a big gag. Like maybe he is dying and this was like his final road trip. I don't know. I wanted it to because the actor playing Peter was so good, I wanted to feel like my heart had been ripped out of my chest.
I wanted it to hit harder for both of them, because what we do learn about Winona J, there's I would assume there's some pretty significant trauma with how she's been living her life. And I this escapism into the extraterrestrial universe. I needed that not to be real. I think I thought it was really hokey by the time we get the Jim Jones cult people coming and saying like, "Hey, we've been waiting for you."
It was all hokey to me on her end because it just seems so crazy. And then we get like a moment halfway through where Peter and Winona, they're driving this ugly ass pink Jeep, and even getting the Jeep is a conflict because Peter says he has a car, but really it belongs to a friend of his who died, and he believes that she gave it to him.
Who suicided. Mm-hmm.
But then when he goes to get the car, it's not even where Peter lives. It's at this guy's house who's a family member of his friend, and he's claiming he owns the car. They end up stealing it. And then it's like this car, Winona has like $1,700 in cash. She could have bought a nicer car than the car they were driving for $1,700.
And has 3 days to get there.
So that plot point felt a little like they could have done better with that.
The stakes could have been higher.
But their car, that raggedy ass pink Jeep, breaks down, and then a car pulls over to help them, and it's like these zany, like this pair of zany characters. One appears to be like gender non-conforming, and the other one is dressed up like a damn alien. So when like the shot of this person getting out of the car, that just was like, okay.
And has this big
Helmet,
alien helmet that they leave behind that is utilized again in a moment. I also didn't really like that. That was my least favorite scene of the film, and made me. It just felt very contrived, like it's trying too hard to, because when you have a road trip film, so to avoid tedium, you got to have these like
events,
neurotic little stops and starts on the way. And also going back to the handsome stranger, who's supposed to have a Canadian accent but sounds Irish to me.
Well, he sounded Irish in the dream sequence, but then when in reality he didn't sound Irish. So I guess that was part of Peter's fantasy.
Maybe.
It did take me out though, before we realized that it was a fantasy.
Where are we again?
Anyway, what would you give this film?
2 out of 5.
I would give it 2 out of 5. Anything else? Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.